The following are excerpts from two separate accounts of what I would now call remote viewing that I took to beneath the Great Pyramid of the Lion, or rather the Risen One, at Giza. And the first was in August of 1978, and the second was in August of 1979. August 1978. During morning meditation, I was projected beneath the Pyramid of Giza, the Great Pyramid, the Temple of the Risen One. I saw myself in a loose white robe of thin, transparent linen. Before me was the river which runs through the marble floor of the temple. The floor itself can widen or narrow to allow a greater or lesser flow of the river. The waters come from underground, upward into the temple, the flow regulated through spigots aligned as the meridian on a violin. It was here I descended into the river, walking down several steps into the water. As I entered waist deep, the whole of the water was lit with a yellow golden hue. Above the river were pyramidical rays of light, one after another, as if being viewed in endless mirrors down the river. I allowed the whirlpool sprays of water beneath the current to flow about my body, and became very relaxed from the sensation. I swam around gently in the currents. As I came from the water, a robe was placed around my shoulders by a young woman, and the marble floor slid over the river. The design atop the floor panel which had concealed the river was a large emblem in several shades of blue, resembling the fleur de lis. It pointed toward giant double doors. I walked forward and entered through the doors. Instantly, a bluish light came about me and dried my body, hair, and robe. Before me in the chamber was a table shaped like a boomerang, as it would be seen coming toward me. The walls to the room were a pastel green. The table and floor was white. On the floor, I stood in the center of a design in multi-shades of green. It was circular, with the green rays of differing widths and lengths resembling a solar emblem. At this point, a personage whom I recognized as my benefactor, Thoth, arose from his seat behind the table. From behind the table, there began to shine a blue-gold light, as if seen through transparent beaded strings. The wall, which had before seemed solid, was finally dissolved by the light. We entered the chamber behind the wall light, or the lighted wall. Here, suspended on light beams, was what I recognized to be the great table of invocation, crafted of beautiful wood, golden lines coming from its center, divided into 24 sections. Each section had beautiful colored designs worked into its flawless surface. August 1979. I lay on my back with my arms out from my sides as a living cross. In my left hand, I held a rose quartz crystal, and in my right, an Iceland crystal. I was projected into the glass pyramid and experienced the purple and yellow rays inside cones of white and golden light beaming into the sand dollar cross, causing it to become the lighted cross of Solomon, which is the ray of the arisen Spirit. The sun symbol, the lapis ring, and golden chains were all bathed in golden light and harmonized with the cross. I was then transported inside the Hall of Inscriptions, within the Omega Temple of the Illumined, which is beneath the Great Pyramid of Giza. The chambers around the hall, including the Kapha, composed the Illumined Temple. There is one other Illumined Temple within the central earth. That concludes the reading, but I'd like to touch on a few points here. Speaking of, in the first, in August of 1978 vision, or remote viewing, whatever you wish to call it, here suspended on light beams was what I recognized to be the great table of invocation, crafted of beautiful wood, golden lines coming from its center, dividing it into 24 sections. Each section had beautiful colored designs worked into its flawless surface. Now, on Good Friday of this year, Thoth informed me that this table, and I had not gone back and read this, but I remembered it because it was an event for me. I didn't remember the description. I just remembered that I had this experience where I was, underneath there, and I went through this process, and there was this big round table, and it doesn't say, does it say it was round here? I don't think so, but it was round. And Thoth brought that back into my mind. And he said that table was the Rastaru, which was an identical child table, so to speak, recreation of the one in the ascended Isle of Atlantis, and that table there was duplicated in the one under the pyramid, and that this one under the pyramid was on that, not on Good Friday. That was when the Grail Logos and the Templar skull were transported. This was a little later, maybe a month later, I can't remember exactly, but I did a video on it, when the Rastaru table joined that energy field. Now, all of these objects are objects, but they are translatable. Maybe everything is, if the right person's doing the job. But I think these are especially that way. So he reminded me of this table. So this table, great table of invocation, is the duplicate table. And it is now underneath the sand dunes, actually inside the chamber of Mount Blanca, which is underneath the sand dunes. I didn't realize when I started reading this until I got into it that this was where, I was reading the actual text that he'd referred me to in the past. Well, this past few months ago. And but I didn't go back and read it again. I just remembered that. And now as I'm reading it, it's like, wow, this is it. This is it. When I originally wrote this information, I called what I was doing mental projection. I knew it wasn't astral projection because I had done some of that. So I knew the difference. So I was calling it mental projection. Now I would certainly call it remote viewing. However, when one is remote viewing an actual totally physical place, in the sense that there's no interdimensional polish involved, like I would remote view, on top of the mountain over here. Well, maybe I shouldn't take that as an example because that is crest in the stone. So let's take something else. Like I'm in one house and I'm going to remote view into somebody else's house. That's not maybe a good example either. That could be an invasion of privacy. But let's just take that, okay? I'm remote viewing with their permission into their house. Well, I'm going to see the chair, the table, I'm going to see things in there. Maybe I've never been in their house, but if I'm truly remote viewing, for the most part, I'm going to see the objects there. Now, maybe everything. And maybe, there's going to be a little variation, a very subtle variation in regard to how I see it, because my mind is going to do a few little tricks on me. But mostly, if I'm a really good remote viewer, like the secret government has, then I would be able to, get the gist of what's there. However, if I'm remote viewing inside the crest in the stone here, or inside the Great Pyramid, or underneath the Great Pyramid, it would depend. Maybe I'd just see it as it is, as we understand it, or maybe I would see it in a far more illustrious way. Something that is there, all right, but on a slightly removed dimension. And most certainly what I was seeing here with the floors opening and closing and the beautiful table and all of that, that would have been on a slightly removed dimension, just as real. But what would one see if they actually, climbed down into the shafts and got into the chambers? They'd probably see some interesting things that would relate to what I'm seeing. But I seriously doubt they would just pop into the chamber and there it would all be. Unless they were initiated, and then their bodies would literally move into that energetic dimension with them. So I just thought I would mention that. But regardless, when I had these experiences, as I'm sure many people have had, I'm not talking to people that have not had these experiences, more than likely. If you're listening to this, you've had your own remote viewing experiences, your own astral projections and all kinds of things. So I imagine you can identify with this. But at that time in my life, I was having more of those things than I am now. There are probably many reasons for that I won't go into. But, I've gone through different stages in my life. And I don't feel that I've regressed, but I simply moved on to another stage. Let me see if there's just anything else here I want to share before I conclude. So I do believe this concludes my video here and the 2 videos on the Great Pyramid and the Hall of Records. But you never know, another one may pop up for the series. Okay, thank you for listening.